Hi, this is Jen Jensen from Frosting and Glaze, and today I'm going to show you how to make a cardamom raspberry snowflake pull-apart wreath. Say that 10 times fast. What is it? It's a dough that you layer with your favorite fillings, then you cut it and you twist it, and it makes a snowflake pattern, and when you bake it, it comes out of the oven. It's so beautiful. This is really great if you need to impress somebody. This is what you want to make them. I believe that anybody can do this. It's just some time and a lot of patience, and I really believe in you. So get yourselves ready and get your ingredients set up, and I'm going to take you through this. I'm going to hold your hand the whole way, and you're going to have a great baking snowflake extravaganza in the end. Okay, ready? Here's the first step. We want to get our yeast ready. So we take 1 1/4 cups warm water. Warm, what does that mean? It means when you stick your pinky in that you either don't feel the water, and that's okay, because that would mean it's like body temp, it's warm. It's a little slightly warm, like you want to jump in and take a nice bath, and then that's good too. If you put your pinky in and it's really cold, or it feels like, oh, that's cold. Okay, it's cold, it's not warm. If you put your pinky in and it's, oh, it's hot, don't use it. It's too hot, it'll kill that yeast. Too cold, nothing happens. Too hot, you kill your yeast. So then we're gonna take a tablespoon of yeast and 1 teaspoon of sugar. The sugar is gonna go in there, it kind of helps feed the yeast and gives them something to eat. So they're very happy. We're using instant yeast. Instant yeast compared to active yeast, instant is just a smaller granule, and it's ready to go. Technically, it's instant, right? It's instantly ready. Where active, you have to activate it before you use it. But this is also what we're doing with this instant yeast is we're actually activating it. We're giving it a little jump start. So we've given it the sugar to eat. I put it into the warm water, stir it just a tiny bit. You know, you don't have to go crazy and dissolve it. And we're gonna give it 5 minutes. You want to see it, it might create some bubbles in there. It might get like fluffy looking almost. That you know it is alive, it's eating. If it's creating, like if you do see little tiny bubbles, it's creating carbon dioxide. It eats and creates carbon dioxide. So that's a good sign your yeast is alive and it's ready to go. If it all went bleh and nothing happened, it just sunk to the bottom, that yeast is dead, especially if there's sugar in there and after 5 minutes, like there's nothing. Nothing, no fluffy, no puffy, no anything. I will show you a close-up of what this looks like so you get a really good idea of a healthy, ready-to-use yeast. 5 minutes. Okay, while your yeast is yeasting for 5 minutes, they call it blooming. While your yeast blooms, what we're going to do is in a small bowl, we're going to add 3 eggs, 4 tablespoons of melted butter that is slightly cooled. You don't want it to cook your eggs when you put it in there, so make sure it's not scalding hot. And a tablespoon of honey. And we're going to add all that. Honey is sticky. It takes longer to get in the bowl. Okay, we're going to add all that into the smaller bowl, and we're going to whisk it just to combine it. Okay, after you've whisked your egg mixture, then we're going to add 4 1/2 cups of flour to, I'm using a KitchenAid for this. You can do this by hand, absolutely. I'm using a 5-quart KitchenAid. I'm going to use the dough hook as well. So I put in 4 1/2 cups of flour, and I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of salt. And I'm going to also add my cardamom. For this, I'm using 1 teaspoon of cardamom. This smells so good. And then I'm going to put my dough hook on the mixture and just do it on low just to mix up that salt and the cardamom. It's been 5 minutes and I'm going to show you what really healthy yeast looks like. Okay, this is what really healthy yeast looks like. If you look, you could see those tiny little bubbles all in there, and it's like puffy or fluffy, whatever you want to call it. That tells me that this yeast is so happy to be eating that sugar, and it's ready to go to work. Okay, so next we're gonna get rid of this whisk. And I'm going to add the yeast mixture to the eggs mixture, and I'm going to make sure that I scrape out everything that's inside here because we want to use all of that yeast. We don't want to lose any of it because we want that snowflake that dough to rise and be beautiful and make this beautiful puffy snowflake, right? So we want to make sure that that all gets in there. Then just give this a light stir to combine it. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start the mix on low, and I'm just going to slowly pour in my new egg yeast mixture. And I'm going to let that do its thing. I'm going to make sure I scrape all this out too. I hate leaving stuff in my bowl. Pastry chef in me, I need to get every single little drop out of there. So we're going to let this mix for a few minutes. If you're doing it by hand, you want to knead it until it's completely combined, and then you would think like 10 minutes, okay? You do not want this to be a real sticky dough. So if you find when it's all fully combined and you're kneading it, or after it's gone like 3 to 4 minutes in your mixer, if it's sticking to the bottom while it's been kneading, then you need to add a little bit of flour. You can add up to a half a cup of flour. If you have to put in more than a half a cup, you either live somewhere in the tropics or maybe your measurements could have been slightly off. So you want to, I'm going to show you the inside of the bowl because mine's a little sticky and I'm going to add flour, but I want you to see what that looks like. Okay, if you can get a good look inside that bowl, and you see how the bottom, it keeps sticking to that, I'm going to add a little flour. I have a half cup here, but I don't think it's going to need a half cup. It might need an eighth to a quarter because I want it to pull off of that bottom a little bit and not stick to the sides either. So then I'm going to put, it's probably less than an eighth. And I'm going to let that go. I also make sure that my mixer is on the lock position when I'm making dough because you don't want it to pop up and down. You can see my mixer's moving around a lot, and that's because it's probably about 15 years old, and it's been well loved, as you could imagine. So here we go. That was like a little, maybe an eighth, maybe slightly less than an eighth. And the dough is pulled off the bottom, swiveling around. It's like beautiful. That's exactly what you want to see. I'm going to let it go for another 2 minutes of kneading, and that should be good. Using a mixer to knead your dough, what you need to remember is that what your mixer can do compared to what you can do by hand is very different. Your mixer has a really nice strong motor on it, and so if something tells you to knead for 10 or 15 minutes, it's probably 3 to 5 minutes on your mixer once everything's fully combined. Take into account it needs to combine it first to make that nice dough, and once it does, it's about 3 to 5 minutes for a proper knead on a mixer, as opposed to if you're sitting here kneading your dough by hand, it's more likely a 10 to 15 minutes, so that's going to be your difference. But once you feel like that's all good, you're going to take your dough out. And what can be very helpful when you're removing dough is you can put flour on your hands. What I'm going to do is put it into a lightly oiled bowl. And I want to show you that. This is vegetable oil I use, and you can, any bowl you want, it could be plastic, metal, glass, ceramic. I just put a drop in, and then I'm going to grab a paper towel, and I just wipe that oil around. It's a thin coat. I just want to prevent too much sticking. I don't want my dough to get all oily. The other thing I find extremely helpful, besides flouring your hands to remove the dough, is using one of these. It's called a bench scraper or bowl scraper. It's flexible and it has this nice rounded edge, so you can scrape out everything in your bowl and get every nook and cranny. So the first thing, I'm just going to pull that dough off the dough hook, and if if it's sticking too much, you can always add more flour to it, and then close it back up, and that's great. I'm going to take my bowl scraper, and I'm just gonna, you see how it fits the bowl like that? It's really cool. And I'm just gonna take all this dough out like that, and it goes right into my nicely, lightly oiled bowl. And then what I recommend to do is to cover the bowl in plastic, and then we're gonna let it rest for an hour to an hour and a half. I live up in Connecticut, so my weather, right now, it's a little chilly out. My house is a little bit drafty, so for me, I'll cover this dough with saran wrap or plastic wrap, and I will put it actually in my oven where it can kind of be alone. I don't turn the oven on, I don't turn any oven lights on, I just put it in the oven. That way it prevents any drafts from the house. It's a nice cozy place for it. Yours might be in a corner somewhere in your kitchen where it's warm, so there might be another room where it's warmer. Just, you don't want to be putting it out like on the front porch if it's cold out. And some of you live in places where that doesn't matter, right? That it's nice and warm all the time and the sun is probably shining every day. Okay, so you have your dough, what it looks like, and then I'm going to put it away for an hour to an hour and a half, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, so something you can make in advance while you're waiting for your dough to rise is the filling and also the glaze. So the filling is really simple. It's 1 cup of raspberry jam. I use jam because it doesn't have the little seeds in it. You could use jam, you could use preserves, it's up to you. It's not going to be like crunchy, gritty in your mouth if it has the little seeds. But I like to use the jam. So it's a cup of that. It's a ½ teaspoon of cardamom. If you don't like cardamom, don't use cardamom. You could use cinnamon, ginger, a little bit of nutmeg, whatever spice you would like to. Or if you don't want any spice, you don't have to, and you didn't have to put it in the dough if you really didn't want to. But you're going to mix that together with half of zested lemon. And if you are not familiar with zesting, this is a zester, microplane. And if you don't have a zester, you could use a cheese grater. Like you could just, and I have this other kind of cheese grater here. You can use the small part of this. Just go gentle on the cheese grater because it's not as fine as the zester, but it works if you don't have a zester. I'm going to use my zester, and what I like to do when I'm zesting is I take a piece of parchment paper, or you can use wax paper. I will put my, easiest for me is I will hold it in my left hand because I'm a righty, and I put my zester down on the counter, and then I take my lemon, and it's one direction, not two, and I just go in a slight downward motion, and I'm kind of rotating my lemon. I'm very gentle with this. I'm not grinding it. I'm not putting pressure on this. It's just a nice light feel to it. You do not want to see white when you're finished, because if you get down to the white of the rind, that's the bitter part. You just want the yummy lemon flavor part. So you can see maybe that the shine is off. It's not white, but there, I've zested, and I tap, 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 and it comes out of the back a little bit easier because sometimes it sticks. So you want to do that for half of this lemon. And then on another parchment, while you're doing this for the filling, you'll do the other half of the lemon zested on the other piece of parchment for the glaze. And I want to show you one more trick that I have up my sleeve with my lemon. So I've successfully zested half of my lemon, and I'm tapping out the good extra stuff. And I just, a nice swipe, gentle swipe. You got to be careful because some of these zesters can be very sharp. So you don't want to swipe down with your finger to get any of that. So that's why I like to just tap, tap, tap a lot. And then on the inside, not sharp, but just a nice gentle slide to get that. So I have half of my zested lemon, but let's say I'm going to save this for the glaze and then do the other half that'll go right into my filling. I'm not going to leave this out for like 20 minutes to a half hour while I'm, eventually going to get to my glaze. I'm going to fold it up because the air gets to it, it'll really dry it out and then makes it a little bit like textured. We don't want that in this. We want like a nice texture. We don't want little dry pieces of lemon rind in there, lemon zest. So I'm just folding it until I use it. And that way it'll help keep the moisture in, and you'll be a better person for it. You'll be a better chef for it. And then I'm going to continue. I'll zest the other half of this lemon, and I'm going to make you watch me do it. But I'm real gentle, and I keep checking where I'm missing because, this is round, this is flat. So you kind of really got to rotate that lemon. And once you feel like you got all the good stuff off of there and you feel like it's about half, I'm just going to take it all because I do like a nice lemony flavor. I love that bite against the sweetness of the raspberry. So I'm going to make sure I get it all off. So here, this is what my lemon looks like now. You can see there's nothing really white about it. It's still yellow. Yes, there's still shiny parts, but I'm making a video and I'm trying to go fast. A gentle wipe on the inside for all the stuff that didn't tap out. Good. And then I can use my parchment, give it a little crease fold, and then it goes into my raspberry and cardamom. It's sticky. You might have to just wipe it out with your hands. Do your best. See how easy this is so far? Like nothing's been difficult. I hope. So you stir this up. Stir that zest nice into there. And then we're going to use this later. Okay, it's been about between an hour and a half for your dough that's been rising. What we're looking for is basically for it to have doubled in size. So when you look, it'll be nice and beautiful. What you're going to do is take a little bit of flour and lightly sprinkle your counter table, we call it a bench. And then again, with that beautiful bowl scraper, I'm going to scrape out my dough. I'm going to put a little flour on my finger so it doesn't stick. And I'm just going to scrape it out nice and gentle right onto my lightly floured bench. Get it all out. The next thing I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to cut this into 4 equal parts. You can definitely eyeball it if you'd like. I'm a little bit more particular. I want mine to all be identical, so I'm going to use a scale. I have one of these nice little weight scales, or like I said, you could just eyeball it. A little bit more torturous, so I'm just going to do it into half and do that half into half because I need 4 pieces. Then if you feel like it, you could weigh each of these pieces just to check how good you were. You want to be kind of in the same ballpark for all these pieces. This is a lot of pressure to do this on camera because I'm not good at it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that off and I'm going to weigh each piece and get it perfect. So I have my 4 pieces that all now weigh approximately the same. And I'm going to, it got a little sticky on my countertop, so I'm going to use my bench scraper and scrape that sticky dough away because I want to make life easier for myself because I need to roll each of these pieces out to be approximately 10 inches in diameter. It'll be easier if there's nothing sticky on my countertop. So I'm going to lightly flour again. I'm going to take my first piece, and I'm just making it kind of smooth on top because I had a couple extra pieces put on there. So that'll be my bottom. And I gently, really gently, I'm not kneading this, I'm not massaging it, I'm just really gently made a little circle out of it. It'll make my life easier because I need to roll it into a circle. I'll do the first one at this camera angle, and then I'll do a second one looking down on it so you can see from that angle. So I have my slightly rounded dough. I'm taking a rolling pin. I use a French rolling pin. I love these rolling pins. I highly recommend them. I like them better than the straight ones. There was some learning to this, learning curve, but I love this type of rolling pin because you can manipulate, because of the angles, where you put pressure on your dough. I'm going to lightly flour by just taking flour in the palm of my hand and rubbing it on my rolling pin. Like I said, I'm going to roll out a circle. I have a ruler here because I'm going to get each of these to be exactly 10 inches or to the best of my ability to get them to be 10 inches. When I roll, I do just light rolls, a quarter turn, light roll, quarter turn, light roll. You see I'm not going over the edges. I'm just going up to the edges, quarter turn, up to the edges, a quarter turn. You're going to start to need to use both hands to turn it, to keep it into a circle. You also might need to flip it, redust, put it back. You don't squish it too hard when you're rolling. You want to be a little gentle, but a little bit firm. You want this dough to know who's boss. Got that? Who's boss? There's also a point, and it depends on your counter and if it's sticky, that you might say, okay, I've got 9 inches by like 11, right? So I want it to be 10. So I'm just gonna keep it in place, stop turning it, and do that. Just kind of roll it. I've got really like 11 inches. So that's fine with me because this is the pan I'm using. if you have a flat pan, you just want to make sure that this diameter can fit onto your pan. What I like to do with my, because I do not have a flat pan, is I use the back of the pan and I make sure that my circle can fit onto that pan. I put my pan upside down and then I pull off parchment, and I'm going to make sure that that parchment fits well over that pan. And then I have my circle, which has become more of an 11-inch circle than a 10-inch circle, and that is absolutely fine, as long as all of my circles are measured the same. And then I'm going to lie that. Did you see how I did that? I took my rolling pin, I held up the corner, and I gently rolled my circle, picked up the pin, and then I placed my circle onto the parchment and roll it off. Then you want to make sure you're centered on with your parchment and your circle. So I want to, and you want to make sure that that base layer is how you want it. You can use your hands, they're perfect tools to use for making sure that your circle is round. So you can pull and stretch wherever you need to. That's the top. I'm sorry, that's the bottom piece. So there you go, that's the bottom piece. It's nice and round. I've used my hands, my rolling pin to get it to the shape that I want and to the size that I want. Now, I'm going to push that out of my way and I'm going to move on. I'm going to set myself up for the next piece. Now, before you roll out that second piece, what I want you to do is go get your filling. Yummy, yum, yum. Just kidding. And I'm going to spread it onto my base here, my base piece. I'm going to keep a 1/2 inch clear all the way around. And what I can use is I can use a spoon to spread it, or you can use something called offset spatulas. You can use a small one, is probably better for this because it's only a 10-inch, but you could use a big one if that's what you have. And if you don't have any of those, you can use the bottom of a spoon and spread it like you might have done for pizza, maybe. So I'm going to do 1/3 of this. And so that's like a big guess, right? Because it's very soft. So I'm going to take my small and I'm just going to push from the center out. I'm going to stop when I get about a 1/2 inch out. Turn your tray instead of your wrist. It'll make spreading easier for you. Or your pan, I should say. And you just want to spread that out. Making sure you really need that 1/2 inch all the way around that does not have any jelly on it. If that happens though, and it's very easy, don't worry about it. You could do what I just did where you wipe a little bit, but in the end it will be okay if there's a little bit of jelly on there. I'm going to just put a little bit more. If you want to measure out, so you have a third, or use a 1/3 measure cup, that's cool too. So you just do that, and you can see it looks so beautiful. And then it gets on your fingers. Don't stick them in your mouth unless you wash your hands. Okay. So now this next one, I'm going to show you how I roll it from above. Okay, so hopefully this is a good angle to watch from, but I'm going to do the next few layers. So I have my nice circle of dough, and I just out a little bit, turn a 1/4 turn. Roll a little bit, turn a 1/4 turn. Notice not going over the edges. When you see it start doing that, you need to grab 2 hands. Patience with rolling. If you're not good at it or familiar with it, just be really patient with yourself, because if you push too hard and you're trying to go too fast and you get frustrated, then it's easy to turn it into a square, and square is not going to help you. So just go nice and slow if you need to. Just little rolls, gentle. You're not pushing too firmly. Check yourself every now and then to see how many inches you've got it. See, this is almost 10, and of course this way is like 11. So again, I said your hands are your best tools, so you can just kind of spread it out with your hands if you need to. You can at some point just do a light roll. You just want to make sure that your dough is not too sticky on the surface, and let's see. So now I'm at like 11. So approximately 11, and I can pull in any direction that I want, right? So a little bit sneakier is that I want to get now this layer sitting completely exactly on top of this layer perfectly. Got it? So I'm going to just put my roller on my dough and gently with my fingers pull and bring my tray closer to me. I'm holding my dough and I'm going to match up the bottom, and then just carefully, gently, I'm not pulling, I'm just going to let it flop on. That was really lucky, and I'm just going to have it pull out and match, push in where it needs to, turn the tray, not go crazy, and you just want to pull it out so you kind of have it meeting the ends, like that. I hope you can see that okay. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but it should be close. Then you're going to take, excuse me, another third of that jam mixture, and you're going to spread it out on top of that. So again, I have my offset spatula, and I just push it out, leaving about a 1/2 inch. Instead of trying to turn my wrists around and quick note about rolling out your dough. The more you are kneading it or rolling it and trying to manipulate it, the more you start to work up that gluten. That's something you don't really want to be doing with this. You'll see it'll start like fighting against you. So that's when you know the dough's had enough. This is my 4th and final piece, and so I'm just going to take it and place it on top, just like I did the others, trying to get it as best as I can to match up. You don't want any, especially the top, you don't want it to be too big, and you definitely don't want it to be too small, and you want to do your best to try to get them, it's amazing if you can get this perfectly even. You're awesome. But if you can get it close, like the way I have, then that's great. You'll also see, like, jelly is going to start, jam's going to start to ooze out. You want to try to prevent that from happening too much, because then it makes it harder to do your twists when you're cutting. But this is the this is to the next step. So you want to get a cutter that's approximately 2 inches. If you don't have a cutter that's about 2 inches, somewhere around, then you could, maybe you have a glass, you have something. We're not cutting through the dough, we're just going to place that on the center. If you're really particular, 4 inches, and let's see what this side is. It's a little, and you want to try to make sure that you're as centered as possible on your dough. There will be some shrinkage as the dough, it starts to like contract a little bit. That's okay too. Just get your cutter in somewhere, or your circle, whatever you're using, somewhere kind of in the center. You could give a light push so you see that circle, but you don't want to cut through that dough with the cutter. Okay, now super exciting is the next step. And this I recommend to do with a sharp knife. Okay. This next part is really crazy, but it's a lot of fun. And if you have to, a good idea, what I did was, when I first learned how to do this, was I actually drew it out on a piece of paper so that I could see it. I needed to see it visually on the paper in order for me to be able to make the cuts. Sometimes reading a recipe that tells you to do this, you're like, what? So this is where you need all of your patience, the rolling, and then now the cutting part. But this is the fun part, okay? So I have a moist towel, because sometimes you're going to need a clean knife because it gets full of jelly, right? So my first cuts on here are going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? So jelly will spill out. The jam's going to come out and whatever, but have faith, okay? And a lot of patience. So, and the other thing is you want to be a little, you want to make sure you're cutting all the way through and be aware that you're getting down to the board. So I'm cutting from the tip here all the way down, and I just want to make sure that my knife kind of went through. I'm not trying to separate that. I turn the tray. My knife is still cool. Push all the way down there. Okay. Turn the tray. The knife is still okay. Cut all the way through. Turn the tray. Cut all the way through. Good. Now, we're going to go through and cut each of those sections in half. This you want to try to make sure that you're really doing half. Turn. If you have a little bit of dough, take it off. The less sticky your knife is, the cleaner it goes through, right? So I cut each of these sections. It's my sharp knife, and I'm very careful. And then the next thing I'm going to do is cut each of these in half. This is where it's going to get a little tricky, because it's a smaller piece of dough that you're cutting through, and it's going to want to turn. So you want to just okay. It's going to get messy. And maybe, who knows, maybe if your knife is a lot sharper than my knife, you're not going to have such issues of it turning too much. Just try to keep it as flat as possible there. Eventually we're turning each piece, and you do want to make sure that you're getting the cut all the way up to that point. Just watch your fingers too as you're so busy cutting. You don't want to cut anything off. Now, your next stage, a little bit trickier, is you're going to take 2 at a time and you're going to twist them outwards once, twice, 3 times. Now this also, I had to play it in my mind a few times. But so you gently pick up the edge. You want to start with a dry one, not with one that has jelly spewing out. And you pick one up in each hand, and I'm gonna gently turn outwards once, twice, 3 times, and pinch together. The bottom, and then this piece, you can either leave like that, or you can pull it and tuck it under. And don't worry that it's not coming out like perfect, pristine, or something weird. It's okay. It'll be okay. Just keep telling yourself. Then turn. See how this got weird? That's okay too. I'm just gonna make sure that there's no jelly all over my fingers to make my life easier. Pick up from the bottom. I have each section, and I'm gonna turn once, twice, 3 times, whoops, and get the corners together. I'm gonna pinch those, and then I'm gonna pull this kind of over. If you can see with that kind of bottom I'm trying to get here, and that's good enough. See that? See how beautiful the striping is? And it's okay that it's not perfect. Trust me, it's okay. And if yours is really messy, whatever, just keep wiping your fingers off and keep going. You're gonna be okay. My dough is really sticking together. I think that's why it's pulling. So I'm gonna get up under there. Once, twice, 3 times, and stick it. Okay? And then I'm gonna pull this up under there. Okay? It's gonna be so gorgeous. Wipe my fingers off so they're not sticky. Ready to keep going? You can come in. I'm taping, but I don't have to. So your snowflake, or it looks kind of like a snowflake, it's fine if it's a little wobbly. One of the points I want to make is that at these edges, you want to make sure that you pinch them together, or what I did was pinch them and tuck them under as best as you can. And it's fine if things aren't perfectly symmetrical. Every snowflake is different, just remember that. Now, important, like you want to make sure that it's still on the tray evenly. It's great if you have a flat pan. I unfortunately don't, and I've been too lazy to go get one, so this is what I do, and I just make sure that it's at least centered. The next very important step is you want to take lightly greased plastic wrap over the top of this, because we're going to have to let it rise again. So I pull up, and then I take spray. You could use Pam, like whatever, lightly spray it. Make sure that it'll be enough to cover your snowflake. gently, you're not tucking anything. You're just gently laying it on top. 45 minutes later, look how beautiful that is. The dough is risen, and because I greased my plastic wrap, it comes off nice and easy. Look how gorgeous that is. So you can see that before, when you're twisting it and tucking it, it doesn't matter that it's absolutely perfectly done, because as long as you tuck in your pinch and tuck in your corners, when it does its second rise, it's just fills in all that, and it's just so gorgeous to look at. So for my egg wash, I'm just gonna crack an egg. I'm gonna just stir it up with a fork a little bit. And just something to let you know about egg wash. It's the yolk that is the fat of the egg, and that gives us a more golden color on our doughs when we put a wash on. The white of the egg is what gives it a shine. So together, you'll get a golden brown with a little shine on it. If you were to add milk to this, or sometimes they ask for heavy cream, what they're asking you to do is to add in more fat, which is going to give you more color. So just that being said, if you think you're gonna put fat-free milk in your egg wash, it's okay. What they want you to do if they're asking for milk or cream is to give it that added color, a tiny bit of flavor, it's not much. So it's your choice with this egg wash. If you want to add a little heavy cream or a little milk, I would say like a teaspoon, maybe teaspoon and a half. You don't have to, and I'm not going to choose to do that. I'm just going to go with my plain egg wash. I love these little silicone brushes for adding that. You don't want it to be too thick, and don't worry about the jelly or the jam that you've used. Just lightly brush. I'm going to tell you while you're watching this get brushed on the dough is that for the filling, for the layers, we use the raspberry jam with cardamom and the lemon zest. You don't have to do that. You might choose to do, let's say, you want to saute garlic in butter. Little note is because this is, on parchment paper and we were cutting through, I've noticed sometimes that I cut through the bottom, and if I bake it like this, it's fine, but it has a tendency, that jam, to seep through some of those cuts in the parchment and stick to the plate. So what I do before I stick it in the oven is I took a second piece of parchment paper, and I'm just gonna carefully slide it right under there. It's better if you have a friend that can help you, but like I'm doing right now, you can manage. You just have to be real careful, patient in doing it yourself. Don't try to pick up the whole thing, because it's, it's dough and but I'm just slowly inching that second piece of parchment paper all the way under. And this way I just am reassuring that it won't totally stick. If you have a non-stick tray to put it on that, then you don't have to bother with this second slice. But there you have it. Your snowflakes in the oven. We're gonna make the glaze. It's super simple. You take a half a cup of confectioner's sugar, and you want to use that half a lemon zest that's been so nicely folded up into parchment paper. We're going to do a half a cup of heavy cream. make sure, get all that out. And then we're gonna do, I think it's a teaspoon of lemon juice. So we take that zested lemon. Sometimes it's helpful, depending on your lemon, if you just roll it before you cut it, get it all juicy. And then I'm gonna be careful with my fingers. I'm gonna cut it in half. If you have a lemon squeezer, that's great, you can use that. And but I find when I just need to do one lemon, using the lemon squeezer for me, like juice goes everywhere sometimes. So I have like a little strainer and I put it over my little bowl. And then I have my lemon and I have this fun juicer and I just squeeze and rotate. And you get the juice out. And that's good. Sorry, and you need a teaspoon, and that's gonna go in here too. And if you like it really lemony, you can put more in, but start with a teaspoon, mix it up, taste it, and see if that's good for you. I'm gonna use my little whisk again. Oh my God. Will you look at that thing? How beautiful is that? It's a nice golden brown. And when I tap, I'm getting like a hollowish sound, which means that it's nice and done. You can check by pulling up the bottoms underneath. And if it's a nice golden brown underneath as well, then you've done good. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna let it rest for 5 minutes to cool it down. I'm gonna transfer it onto a plate and then I'm gonna put my glaze on it. Okay, it's been cooling off. It's between about 5 and 10 minutes. It's still nice and warm, which is the best way to serve it. You can serve it just like this. I mean, please, this is just in itself is gorgeous and will taste beautiful. Another option is our glaze that we made, and you just drizzle it over the top. If you don't want the glaze, you can also just sprinkle powdered sugar on it, and that would be really good too. I'm gonna use the glaze though, because I really like that added lemon flavor, and you don't have to worry about symmetry if you don't want to. I just kind of let it go where it lands. And then as much as you want, it's up to you. You don't have to use all of it. You can use all of it because it's so good.